plenty of all of their own, so they feel free to sort of play countries off against one another in the Middle East. They're also worried that if the Syrian rebellion is successful, then it could encourage Islamic rebellions in Dagestan, Chechnya, all of these Central Asian states currently under Kremlin control, and that's the last thing they want to see.
Now, we're also focusing on the Florida primary race. Republican voters, of course, going to the polls there. Romney and Gingrich, they're kind of courting the Latino voters, aren't they?
They are indeed. They've gone to new lows in courting Cuban-American voters, according to Andrew Rosenthal in the New York Times. Now, he reports that Romney this week said he wanted to see Fidel Castro meet his maker, to which Gingrich replied he would rather see him go to the other place. So Rosenthal says once you're talking about wishing for the death or going to hell of a very old man, that's a bit of a new low. Of course, they're doing this because they're trying to win over very conservative Cuban-American voters, originally descended from people who fled the island in the 60s because they wanted to get away from Castro's regime. So Rosenthal reports that Gingrich is actually running Spanish language ads which go so far as to compare Obama's healthcare system to the Cuban one, saying it's like the socialised medicine that your parents ran away from, which seems to be a bit of a stretch. But will this actually play well with Cuban-American voters? Well, The Atlantic is looking at whether the Hispanics voting in the Republican primary actually care all that much about Cuba. They say, actually, that generation that escaped Castro in the 60s is dying out now, quite literally, and the younger Hispanics who are likely to vote in this election probably care more about immigration and about moves to help recent Hispanic immigrants who've perhaps grown up in the States but don't have citizens' rights, the right to live in the US, to become citizens. And so that could be a problem for both Romney and Gingrich, because when it gets to the final election in the autumn, they've both had a very strong line against immigration, but they'll need to win over a lot of Hispanic voters who want to see their family members be able to become US citizens. But of course, Barack Obama has also disappointed this demographic. He promised them a lot in 2008. He promised them a path to citizenship for people who'd been to university in the US, most notably, and he's let them down. The Hispanic community feels very betrayed by Obama, The Atlantic says.
Now, Elena's also talking about Senegal today. Violence breaking out this week, of course, after that court decision allowing Abdoulaye Wade to stand for president again. What are the African press saying about that one?
Well, briefly, Jeune Afrique magazine says Wade doesn't need to worry about the demonstrators in the streets because he could still almost certainly win the election. There's going to be 14 different candidates on that ballot paper, but most of them are either former prime ministers of his, who are too associated with his regime for the opposition to want to vote for them, or they're total unknowns. So it looks like he'll still win.
And this one, it sounds like you're talking about the French press review, talking about François Hollande, but he's making the headlines in Britain.
Yes, The Guardian exclusively reveals today that he plans to visit London at the end of the month. That's to win over the 400,000 registered French voters who lived in Britain. The problem is not many of them are natural socialist voters. A lot of them work in finance in the city, and most of them voted for Sarkozy the last time round. So it might be quite a hard demographic for Hollande to sell himself to. He's also not gone down very well with some in the city, including the London Mayor Boris Johnson, who tells The Times that while he doesn't want to interfere in the French election, he thinks that Hollande would be dangerous for the UK economy because, of course, he plans to crack down on financial institutions and regulate them more. Now, Johnson thinks this would be very dangerous for the city, and so that's a problem for Hollande, really. The policies that might help him win with French voters might also be scaring off some of the foreign leaders that he'll have to work with if he does become president, like David Cameron.
Fantastic stuff. You managed to get Boris Johnson and François Hollande in the same paper review. Thanks very much, Elena, there with the international papers on France 24. Still to come then, why Greece may still come up short, even with that extra bailout. That comes